Watch. On the passenger seat, map, flashlight, and thermos. On the entrance camera, he's alone. But an hour later, the car is parked by a different trail. Cameras there weren't working. The tire was flat. On the tower, boards nailed from inside, bolts old but fresh. On the glass, a chalk mark, no initials. The recording, short, 4 seconds. Breath, click, phrase. He's standing at the entrance. Why was his car by a trail he never used? Why was the footprint fresh but not his depth? And if he didn't turn on the radio, then who sent his voice on a frequency switched off 10 years ago? The recording started automatically. It was one of those emergency channels no one listens to, but that still work, on old frequencies without digital filters or audio signatures. Just silence that sometimes speaks louder than words. This time, it spoke. Call logged at 4:17:06. Channel B4. The radio didn't recognize the outgoing device. Logs note. External source without ID. Reject protocol. Not activated. Silence lasted 3 seconds. Then, a muffled, hoarse breath, as if someone climbed over a steep slope, and stopped abruptly. Background. Strange. Not wind, not insects, not static noise. Something in between. A low hum, like someone slowly turning an old tape reel near the microphone. And then, the voice. Not back. There he is. Words exhaled. No panic, but marked tension. The last phrase sounded with a tone hard to describe. Not a shout, not a whisper, not a command, but as a fact spoken after everything was done. Then, a click, and silence. The duty dispatcher who heard it at the station near Sector 9's gate didn't believe it at first. B4 hadn't been used since 1999, when the park switched to a new system. Regulations said no signals should come from there, especially at night, especially without confirmation. He rewound the recording, listened 3 more times, heard nothing else. Noted in the log, possible false activation, unrecognized source, vague message. A routine note, no alarm, no emotion. Because it was easier than seriously considering who the hell could speak on an abandoned frequency at 4 a.m. where no active towers exist. The file was saved as B4041 unverified.wave in the unsorted folder. Many such overlaps, echo signals, weather interference, most technical noise. But this file, after a day, became the point where the story of Sam began. Sam, a 37-year-old ranger who served in Olympic for nearly 9 years. The last note of him in the database was the evening of October 11th at 7:36 p.m. He didn't report going out, left no route. He just told a colleague at the gate, "If that light really is flashing, better that I check it out. It's my zone." It wasn't panic, not urgency. It was the tone of a man who knew that beyond the trail, there was nothing. Or shouldn't be. Morning at the administrative building for Sector 9 began as usual. Thermos of cooling coffee, radio humming in the background, badges prepared for new volunteers. But the sign-out log held a strange absence. No entry from Sam Eldridge. That alone was an anomaly. He always checked in. Even when others skipped procedure, he recorded name, trail number, weather conditions. It was automatic for him, like an experienced technician, methodical and precise. But now, the timeout field opposite his name was blank, under route confirmation, simply a dash. Rob Myers, on duty the evening of October 11th, recalled Sam entering around 7:30. He looked composed, in his usual gear, a green windbreaker he wore mostly in transitional seasons, headlamp slung over a shoulder. In his hands, a worn map in a plastic sleeve. But this time he didn't take his standard fleece vest with the park emblem, nor attach his radio tag, which seemed odd for such a meticulous man. According to Myers, Sam only said he planned to check on the light at Ridgetop. He said it without fanfare, as if he knew it personally, not like a journal note. No panic, no extra words. Just a brief statement. If the light really flashes, he'd check it himself. He didn't specify a route, call sign, or exit point. Just slung on his backpack, tightened the strap, and left, leaving an eerie silence behind. Later, entrance cameras confirmed. At 2022, his green 1994 Ford Bronco indeed entered the eastern cluster. He was alone, on the passenger seat. Flashlight, map, thermos, all looked like a standard outing. But then, a gap. No exit, no logs, no reply to test pings, no automatic check at Ridgetop. By all protocols, he vanished. When the investigation began, it turned out the car was found not near Ridgetop, but parked in a lot by the old Grayside 3 trail, a route barely used in October. This trail didn't lead to any active points and wasn't listed in that year's recommended maps. The car was parked neatly, handbrake on, doors locked, no keys found during inspection. The lot camera wasn't working, replacement scheduled for spring, but no funding arrived. One rear tire was flat, seeming to have deflated after parking. In the glove box was a regular student notebook, thick paper, cover faded. The last note looked odd. It wasn't a report or route plan, just a line, like jotted between tasks. The light might be a reflection, or not. The main thing, check myself. If the entrance still exists, look left side. It wasn't an instruction or a just-in-case note, more like something he wanted to leave himself. At that time, the 0417 signal wasn't yet linked to his name. Grayside 3 wasn't considered a potential disappearance site. Everyone thought Sam had just taken a wrong turn. The fire lookout tower Ridgetop had long been removed from the active list. Built in 1958, it was decommissioned in 1994. The archive dryly noted, "Removed from maintenance, closed, access restricted." Since then, it was rarely mentioned, mostly in ironic tones, a relic with a story, but no function. A ghost in the park's building catalog. Physically, the tower stood on a small ledge, away from trails. A short dirt path once led to it, but since the early 2000s, it was unmaintained, overgrown, and often washed out in rainy seasons. Active routes lay kilometers away, and nearly no current staff entered. Ridgetop was a dead zone, not in a dangerous sense, just forgotten. One morning, the duty coordinator opened the site's technical passport. The first thing noted was the last official visit, 1997. Then an inspection for dismantling took place. The report said the structure was stable, posed no environmental threat, the entrance boarded up, no need for disposal. After that, nothing. No requests, no orders, as if it simply ceased to exist. Yet, on the evening of October 11th, someone reported light flashing at Ridgetop. The message was unofficial. A random tourist left it in the visitor log, name illegible, signature resembled initials. Beneath date and time, a short note read, "Saw a light in the tower window around 7:50 p.m. No way to confirm, no cameras, no observation points. The light could be a reflection, a glare, or twilight illusion. But this report, combined with Sam's missing log and the B4 signal, made Ridgetop the first search destination. On October 13th at 11:24, two employees, Larry Hobson and Anders Reed, arrived there. The tower appeared as old documents described, crooked ladder, wooden box on top, rusty metal braces. All as expected for an abandoned site. But something was off. The door wasn't just boarded up, it was blocked with new dry beams nailed from inside the frame, with bolts unaccounted for in the current stock. All bolts identical, hex heads, wrench type, not pryable. Whoever did it must have worked inside, choosing a fastening method not used by Park Service then. Meaning, the door was boarded from the inside. Circling the tower was impossible. The back faced a steep slope. Around the perimeter were traces, moss, broken branches, boot prints. One print pressed deeply into clay as if someone stood still long. Size about 44, sole partly worn, not Sam's boots. His were size 42 with a different tread, standard for rangers. Hobson found a chalk mark on the windowsill that stood out, white, fresh, like left the day before. It read, TD 1012. The font was restrained, block letters. Initials, or was TD a name? No official employee with that abbreviation. But the date matched Sam's disappearance day. When Reed tried to photograph the mark, his camera flash briefly illuminated inside through a gap between the boards. He said it seemed, just for a moment, that someone was in there. But they couldn't check. The bolts were so tight, special tools would be needed. On the way back, Larry muttered, "If it's a joke, it's a cruel one." Reed didn't reply. He still remembered finding a similar chalk mark once in 1998, not here, not this sector, but near an old object. Back then, he thought it childish mischief. Now, he wasn't sure. The day after inspecting Ridgetop, the sector coordinator ordered a check of the route Sam might have taken to the tower. Logic suggested that since the car was found at Grayside 3, that must have been his path. But there was a problem. Grayside 3 never led to Ridgetop. Sam's old map was kept in his personal locker at the station. Paper in a plastic sleeve with marker and pen markings. Judging by the notes, he regularly updated route conditions. On a spread from October 2003, in the bottom right corner was written, RS, check, GR3 detour, a phrase without a verb, typical of notes written for oneself. The Grayside 3 trail started about 5.5 kilometers from Ridgetop. Between them lay a ravine and 2 dense forest zones. Rangers hadn't worked there since the early 90s. However, at one control bend on GR3, the search group found an unofficial, nearly invisible, overgrown but beaten path. No signs of recent movement. The autumn leaves lay evenly. Yet every 20 to 30 meters, old markings remained on tree trunks, strips of worn, faded, peeling electrical tape, partially torn. This surprised everyone. No current map showed any side markings for this trail. But the strips were real, used in the 80s and 90s as temporary signals for internal patrols during work, training, or inspection. Normally, they were removed, but here, they stayed. A senior officer said a similar scheme was used in 1981 during temporary reconnaissance on the south slope. The little path led inward, steeply, through settled ground. At a root fork, the group found a piece of fabric caught between 2 branches. Rectangular, frayed edges with a snag button, clearly a pocket or flap. Color, a faded green, very much like the windbreakers used by rangers in the early 2000s. Given the dense growth, the conclusion was clear. Someone in similar clothing had passed here recently. The material was sent for rapid analysis, checking for sweat, skin cells, fibers. At the same time, Reed, the one who examined Ridgetop, remembered that in 1992, a volunteer got stuck on a similar path while trying to restore an old logging road. That route was declared impassable and never revisited. The protocol listed a section called 7LB, using the same marking scheme now found on the trees. By then, everything fit a clear pattern. The path led toward Ridgetop. The fabric resembled Sam's jacket. The markings, old but guiding there. All began to think he'd found an alternate route unknown to others. Probably by his old map, memory, habit. Maybe wanting to pass as he once did when he started. Only 2 days later, the fabric analysis revealed the unexpected. Fibers matched a 2000s windbreaker model, but the seam and thread code showed it wasn't official uniform. And analysis of skin cells inside the flap proved the fabric did not belong to Sam Eldridge. The DQA1 marker, confirmed by 2 independent labs, excluded a match. It wasn't his DNA, not his jacket, not his pocket. When the search operation entered its active phase, the coordinator ordered a check of Sam's personal space, the trailer where he'd lived since 2001. It was located outside the residential zone, bordering the forest. The home, a standard one-section Winnebago, faded with darkened corners around the windows, as if absorbing decades of winters. The parking lot was gravel, with a recently cut stump left from last summer still lying at the entrance. Neighbors described Sam as not the type to host guests. He rarely joined communal dinners, skipped barbecues, and ignored idle chatter near the store. Not rude, not confrontational, just by himself. Yet reliable. No one recalled him breaking protocol or running late. He was neither liked nor disliked, more respected. The kind of person in small towns you don't invite to parties, but send first in a crisis. Inside the trailer, everything was tidy, dry. The table covered tightly with oilcloth, devices in place, stove cleaned. Nothing new. The TV had a vacuum tube, a model from the early 90s, showing only local channels. On the kitchen shelf were 3 cans of Bush's beans, old noodle packaging, and an unfinished pack of Pall Mall cigarettes. Nearby, an ashtray half full, and a box of matches with the Olympic Fire Control logo from 1990, when that service still existed. It was disbanded in 1997. The main table held an old topographic atlas open to the eastern sector. Margins were covered with pencil notes, dates, symbols, small crosses. Some crossed out. Ridgetop was notably outlined thickly. On the wall, pinned with tacks, hung a faded black and white photo, a fire crew from 1991, young faces, Reagan-era uniforms, and among them, Sam, helmeted but unnamed. Archive documents showed he indeed started as a seasonal observer at a tower near Logan Creek. Ridgetop was still active then, and he might have been there, possibly on duty. In the desk drawer, they found a Sony cassette player with a tape titled Brooks and Dunn Borderline inside. The player was old, with a cracked lid taped on one side. Batteries still worked. Through headphones, a guitar pedal dragged the notes while a voice sang, "You can take the girl from the honky-tonk, but not the honky-tonk from the girl." On the bed lay a handmade quilt. According to his old partner, the quilt belonged to his mother, who died in the mid-90s. Sam always took it on trips. In the trailer, it lay unfolded atop his pillow. The only thing stirring cautious confusion was the absence of one personal knife. Sam always carried a set, a Victorinox pocket knife, the Swiss one with a red handle, and an old Buck 110, a folding knife with a worn wooden handle polished to shine. He'd often showed it on duty, saying he carried it before becoming full-time. The Victorinox was in place, in the stove drawer. The Buck 110 was missing. This wasn't something he could forget. It was always placed to the right of the stove. There lay only worn fabric, a dust patch, and a small clip mark, meaning he took it with him. On the second day of the search, near noon, a 3-person patrol combed the area along the old Grayside Spur service road, a side access once serving trucks. The service road had been closed for about 10 years, crumbling, overgrown in places with shrubs, but still passable in spots with a 4-wheel drive. Along this road, the patrol found a strange clue that temporarily shifted the search's focus. About 400 meters from where Sam's car stood, the patrol spotted a patch of broken glass pressed into moss and soil between 2 roots. The glass was clean, unstained, curved fragments with thin ribs, clearly from a car headlight or signal lamp. The surface had partial deposits, but no mold or oxidation, meaning it had been there only a few days. Nearby were 2 wood chips, small but with fresh light brown edges, as if recently cut. They lay flush with the ground. No obvious damage on surrounding trees, but one trunk about bumper height showed a dent in the bark, like a hard strike. The mark was old, not recent, nor fully grown over. Its height matched the right front turn signal on the Bronco. This was the first serious lead. At first glance, everything fit. Glass from a lamp, dent on a tree, wood chips. The theory was convincing. Sam probably took the old road, misjudged a turn or slip, grazed a tree, lost a signal lamp fragment. This explained why he stopped off standard parking at Grayside 3. Likely he wanted to check for damage and then decided to proceed on foot. The fragments were bagged, tagged, and photographed. One key piece in the center showed the characteristic wave typical for early 90s Ford models. Sam's Bronco had that signal lamp. It all looked like a logical link. But the next morning, during lab inspection, a problem emerged. The mounting pattern, cut angle, and tooth texture didn't match the 1994 model. It was closest to the 1987 Bronco, which had a larger lamp radius and different texture distribution. Furthermore, the glass was lighter than standard, as if replaced, not original. Underneath Sam's hood, everything was factory original. His right turn lamp, though cracked, remained intact, so the glass wasn't from his vehicle. The dent on the tree wasn't his trace, just similar, just nearby. A step forward and a step back. Someone had been in the area before, or after. Someone hit the tree. Someone dropped the glass, but it wasn't Sam. On the third day of the search, with official routes covered and the grid expanded, a radio transceiver was found discarded in a ditch at the hill's base, off the main trail. It lay on its side, half covered by damp leaves, its case slightly scratched, the antenna bent. The model, a Motorola XTS 3000, an old analog standard Sam sometimes used, though the park mostly had digital gear now. The radio resembled one from his kit. The device was switched on. The response team immediately handed it to technicians. Initial inspection showed battery alive, channel settings preserved, one unfinished audio file dated October 12th around 4 a.m. Playing the file, it started with emptiness. Then a light noise, like the radio swinging from a strap. A few seconds later, a short, almost suffocated breath and a voice. "He's standing at the entrance." The recording was exactly 4.8 seconds, then a click and silence. The tone wasn't panicked, but noticeably strained. Signal quality made it hard to confirm if it was Sam's voice, but it was male with a hoarseness resembling his timbre. The dispatcher, knowing Sam personally, said it sounded very much like him, but gave no official comment. The situation gained weight. A switched-on, active radio-transmitting voice was no theory. That was evidence. The group agreed it was his radio and he'd turned it on himself. Doubt was minimal. Sam was at Ridgetop. The next day, when the radio went to the county lab for acoustic analysis, the usual technical protocol began. Signal breakdown, channel cleaning, background frequency analysis. Among procedures was cross-checking incoming and outgoing calls for the period. Here, a discrepancy emerged, shaking everything again. The radio didn't transmit to the outside network, not during recording, not after. The channel was open, but the signal came from outside. In other words, the device didn't send. It received a message. The recording was through an internal buffer triggered by channel activation. The microphone was active, but didn't transmit the speaker's voice. It just captured what came in. Technically, this meant only one thing. Someone spoke on the same channel from another device, impersonating Sam's call sign. Thus, either it wasn't him speaking, or he used another radio, or someone intentionally transmitted, knowing his frequency. The model matched the one in his personal kit, but the serial number wasn't registered, neither in the park nor district. That meant either he carried an unlogged device or it belonged to someone else. Everything rocked again. Yesterday, it was his radio, his voice, his trace. Today, it could be a fake broadcast designed to look like him. 2 days after finding the radio, the team returned to the access road leading to Ridgetop. One patrolman, noticing a discrepancy in trail markings, came across an old, faded route sign nailed to a tree with rusty nails. The sign bore the number D13. On the surface, nothing unusual. But in the 2003 paper routes and Sam's atlas, section D13 didn't exist. That number had once been used but was retired back in 1989 after network reconfiguration. Officially, D13 merged into the new D11A route, which bypassed Ridgetop from the west. Why the sign remained, unknown. Nearby, on a boulder, someone had carved with a knife or metal object. D13, already not there. The inscription was fresh. Deep cuts, wood fibers visible. Next to it on the moss, a partly erased boot print with a patch of clay, now dry. Size roughly matched Sam's. When the support group was ordered to open Ridgetop, there was no time for discussion. The door leading inside the wooden upper structure was still boarded. Bolts, modern, identical, driven from the inside. No nails, no handle, just a smooth board surface and the distinct smell of wood untouched by humans for years. The opening was done manually. Bolts unscrewed with an old non-standard mechanic's wrench from the repair base. The work took over an hour. The first striking thing inside was the tower's condition. It was strangely clean. The floor, dry, no trash, almost no dust. In a corner, broken stool leg. On the wall, a hook where a lantern once hung. Window panes unbroken. One had a small, careful hole, as if someone stuck a hand through. But the main detail, tracks. 2 parallel grooves ran along the wood floor planks from the entrance to the far wall, as if someone dragged something heavy or moved on knees, scraping something metal or hard against the floor. At the edge of one groove was a dusty imprint resembling an elbow contour. Fresh dust showed this was recent. On a beam below a window, someone left a nearly invisible scratch, waist height. When the flashlight illuminated it from the side, a phrase appeared. RS? S? He's not here. The phrase had no signature, but the S could mean anything. Ridgetop sector, or someone's name. The inscription didn't look like a stranger's. Rather, it seemed made in despair, as if whoever came did not find who they expected. On the windowsill of the eastern window overlooking the old creek, a chalk mark remained. TD, October 12th. The white chalk was faded, but without streaks, meaning the mark hadn't been washed away by rain. It was made after the rain stopped, not earlier than midday on October 12th. The handwriting was clear, straight, not like a teenager, graffiti, or prank. Letters were carefully slanted, like someone used to official service reports. Initially, it was thought TD were initials. Someone recalled Trevor Dunn, senior ranger in the sector during the 80s. But archives showed he died in 1991. No other TD existed among current or former staff. One technician suggested a hypothesis. TD might be a code. For example, Test Done or Tactical Deployment. But such abbreviations seemed foreign to Park Security Service, who didn't use them. Next to the mark was a dark stain on the wood, something like a fingerprint traced on dirty glass. No distinct shape, just a lone print without a pair. It looked like someone came, made a mark, and vanished. Near Ridgetop, at a sharp trail bend where a dried creek forms a clay-filled hollow, a searcher noticed a boot print. The print was clear, undistorted, with a full contour, heel, arch, toe, size approximately 42. According to equipment data, Sam wore size 42. It seemed to be his. The boot had a distinctive sole, a double outline, Ranger Trail Standard, purchased in 2001. Only 3 people in the unit wore such boots. Sam was one of them. This looked like a breakthrough. The print was photographed, measured, chalked. It veered off from the main trail as if someone stumbled or paused, choosing a path. No other prints were nearby, no second boot, no return marks. The sample was taken. Dust was fresh, clay still wet. It indicated the print appeared recently, likely after rain on the night of October 12th. Sam, according to records, left the site on the evening of the 11th. Everything fit. Almost. Until comparison results showed one deviation. Step depth was 12% less than expected for Sam's weight. After analysis of the creek print and the chalk mark at Ridgetop, the search group's mood shifted noticeably. They felt something rare in such investigations, a sense that everything was coming together. Not just in theory, but in a logical framework. The clues seemed to support each other. The operational report called this the primary consolidation. The radio, found, audio recording, present, the print, matching. The fresh inscription in the tower with a date, and even the stain near the initials was seen as a signature. He had been there, marking his presence. Unofficially, it was said Sam might have left signs deliberately, finding something, trying to communicate, but running out of time. In this mood, they began constructing a direct timeline. On the evening of October 11th, he left the site without checkout. At night, roughly between 2 and 4 a.m., he reached Ridgetop via an old route, made the mark, possibly encountered someone, hence the voice, the phrase, "He's standing at the entrance," left or lost the radio, then disappeared. Yes, some details remained unexplained. How did he get inside the tower if the door was boarded from the inside? Why didn't any patrols see him or movement near D13? But all this was set aside because the chain was forming. Officially declared the last known point, Ridgetop. From then, the search narrowed. But less than a day later, another check changed everything. The key blow came from an analysis report of the audio signature of the recording from the found radio. According to protocol, every digital or analog transmitter has its own audio signature, not at the voice level, but at the level of background noise, microphone, amplification circuit, antenna, even battery quality produce a unique noise pattern like a fingerprint. The analysis showed the background noise of the recording didn't match the Motorola XTS 3000 transmitter. More precisely, it didn't match the model from which the file was extracted. The noise characteristics indicated a different type of device, a cassette recorder with looped recording and built-in microphone, similar to those widespread before 2000. By noise parameters, strong background, sharp frequency cutoffs, residual reel, clicks, it was assumed the sound was played back and re-recorded. In other words, someone could have played an old recording through a tape recorder, held it near the active radio, and simulated a live broadcast. This meant either Sam pre-recorded the phrase and someone played it back, or the recording was someone else's and the radio was just a receiver. Or, and this was most disturbing, the recording existed before, somewhere, with someone, and everything that looked hot became fragile again. The radio, no longer evidence, but a setup. The tracks, doubtful. The voice, possibly not live. The recording was played dozens of times. Some noted faint echo, others uneven breathing rhythm. But only after a deep spectral analysis did they find what had seemed insignificant before. In the first 2 seconds of the recording, before the phrase, "He's standing at the entrance," a strange low-frequency hum was heard. At first it was taken for atmospheric noise, maybe wind, maybe interference. But when isolated and cleaned, it became clear it had a regular frequency. It wasn't a natural noise. It was a signal, though not vocal. Its structure resembled an echo from an enclosed concrete space, like a mine, storage, or large warehouse. The expert noted such a signal could occur if sound traveled in a closed area, not outdoors, meaning even if the voice was Sam's, it wasn't spoken outdoors in the forest, but somewhere in a structurally enclosed site. The problem was, within the transmission radius, there was no concrete structure. Ridgetop was wooden. Other towers were dismantled, which meant the voice either wasn't his or wasn't where they were searching. It sounded close, but came from somewhere inside. The troubling question haunting the search team was simple. How could Sam get inside the tower if the door was boarded up from inside with bolts he didn't have? When they started disassembling the structure, they found fine notches on several bolt heads, typical of hand twisting with a wrench. Marks were from tension, not wear, as if someone forcefully tightened bolts already stuck. The heads were hexagonal, non-standard, not purchased by the park since the 1990s. One of the support engineers clarified, such bolts were used in old assemblies for temporary structures, like mobile radio stations or technical hangars from the Cold War era. The last purchase of this hardware was in 1983, according to the Federal Fire Service Warehouse Registry. Since then, no park structure was equipped this way, meaning either the tower was boarded up long ago, unknown to anyone, or someone did it recently using parts that shouldn't exist anymore. Moreover, on the inner door frame corner, dried strip of sealant was found. Whitish, cracked, not used by the service in the last 20 years. This sealant brand was discontinued in 1989 due to toxicity and outdated formula. In short, everything pointed to the tower being closed not by park staff and not in the 21st century. But the traces inside were fresh, meaning either someone was restoring it, or the entrance wasn't through the door, or maybe no one went inside at all. In the archive, while checking equipment records, an employee accidentally found a typewritten report from 1984 about Ridgetop. The paper, fragile with margin notes, wasn't part of current maps. It was filed as an appendix to a report on communication equipment decommissioning. Inside, a footnote. Upon detection of routing failure or duplicated coordinates, use backup point according to the internal silence protocol. Ridgetop is placed in reserve. Set marking, do not disclose coordinates. That was all. No protocol number, no clarifications, no map attachments. The phrase was taken out of context. What is internal silence? Who mandated it? Why was Ridgetop moved to reserve? And, most importantly, why did no current staff know about this? Questions piled up, but none of the new clues brought clarity. They only strengthened the feeling something was done here, leaving no explanations. The fifth day of searching. The area around Ridgetop was surveyed at least 4 times. Superficially, everything was clean. But one of the dog handlers, Joel Stanwix, noticed something strange. 2 of the 3 search dogs each time approaching Ridgetop's perimeter slowed, froze, and whimpered. This didn't fit usual scent reactions. The wind blew from another direction, humidity was low. Yet the behavior repeated. Each dog stopped at the same spot, about 70 meters from Ridgetop, refusing to proceed. But they didn't pull back or try to lead handlers away, just froze, as if unwilling to enter. Considering both dogs were trained, had encountered bears, coyotes, even puma tracks, this behavior surprised even veterans. Meanwhile, 2 patrol helmet cameras started glitching, only near Ridgetop. On shots supposed to show the platform and slopes, the image froze or darkened for 2 to 3 frames. All other route sections were normal. The glitch was attributed to magnetic soil anomalies, though no previous similar cases had been recorded here. Satellite route maps on the server froze. The open topographic map stopped updating. A radio in one group caught a background click on channel B4, precisely at 4:17. Technically, everything could be explained, but everyone felt the place was reacting, and not to commands, but to presence. One of the volunteers, John Lambert, while combing the slopes east of Ridgetop, unexpectedly found a trail that wasn't on any map. Narrow, winding, with half-worn steps and barely visible markings. It didn't look like a live trail, more like an old service clearing, manually cleaned. But strangely, branches at head level were broken recently. Crack marks, white, fibers still wet, meaning someone had been on this trail in the last 2 to 3 days. Lambert followed the route about 1.5 kilometers until the trail led him almost directly to Ridgetop. The site was on the other side, at an angle hardly ever shown in plans. There lay a second entrance, a ladder leading to a hatch under the platform. In all site plans, the hatch was marked reserved, never used. But on location, it was clear. The cover was shifted, fresh shoe marks on the bottom step, and a piece of fabric caught in a corner, clearly from a jacket's inner lining. The fabric was sent for analysis. The hatch was documented. The new trail was sketched. The question hung in the air. If the main door was boarded from inside, could someone have entered through below? On the evening of October 13th, while reviewing radio logs, an operator noticed something strange. On Channel B, long unused in current protocols, a signal with the full sector code was recorded. This channel was considered dead since 1991, before Ridgetop was designated an unmaintained tower. The signal was brief, 7 seconds long. The transmission was empty, no voice tag, no automatic ID, not even background. Just a click at the start, static, noise whistle, and a muffled end, as if someone released the PTT button and froze. Signal frequency and type showed old analog equipment was used, a model from the late 80s. Such radios almost no longer work, batteries dead, frequencies mismatched with modern units. But the fact someone, somewhere in the forest, transmitted a correct sector code on a frequency officially out of use over 10 years ago caused alarm. This call didn't intersect with search group actions. It didn't match patrol movements or accompany lights, sounds, or motion. It just entered the system and vanished. The file was saved as ghostsectorcall.wav. The name wasn't poetic, simply because no one knew what else to call it. On the morning of October 14th, while gathering additional evidence, the sector received a digital photo file from tourists in Oregon. They were vacationing in the park's southern part, and on October 11th, around 9 p.m., photographed the sunset over the upper ridge. One photo showed a silhouette atop Ridgetop. The figure was clear. Standing by the right window sash, back to the camera, head in a hood or hat. The proportions were masculine, the height roughly matched Sam's. It seemed like him. But then, the strange began. The camera's EXEF data, digital metadata, showed the photo was taken at 20:56 on October 10th. That is, the day before the disappearance. This brought 2 problems. Sam hadn't left the site at that time. His car was recorded by the Eastern Cluster entrance camera only at 20:22 the next day, October 11th. According to the duty officer, Robert Myers, Sam went out on foot only around 7:30 to 7:40 p.m. on October 11th. So if the EXIF data was accurate, that wasn't him. Either the camera's time was off, making the date wrong, or he was already at the tower a day before official departure, and if so, all collapses. Sam's last informal contact was with his former partner, Grayson Lowell. They served together from 1998 to 2003, after which Lowell moved to administration and rarely patrolled. When asked if Sam had behaved unusually in recent weeks, Lowell hesitated. After a moment he said, he started noticing someone was following him. According to him, Sam mentioned a few times that at night he heard footsteps behind him, as if someone was walking at a distance, not hiding, but avoiding contact. At first he thought it was fatigue. Then he began marking trails on his map where the footsteps repeated. One mark was along Ridgetop, another closer to Grayside 3. On the 6th day after the disappearance, in the early morning around 4 a.m., Sector 9's radio station again recorded a signal. The same frequency range, B4, long discontinued, the same channel, the same packet length, and the same voice phrase. Not back. There he is. It was identical, intonation, breathing rhythm, even the pause before the last word, all matched. But the technical department noticed one detail. The new recording was cleaner. No noise, no background, no interference, like the same file was retransmitted but from different equipment, possibly digital. They automatically compared the new file with the first received on October 12th. The comparison showed a wave structure match of 98.4%, but two areas, the amplitude of the second and the frequency tail at the end, differed. This meant only one thing: it wasn't the same file. It was a replay. Either someone played the old recording, changing the medium or frequency, or a second person recorded the same phrase with the same voice and microphone, or, and this caused the most alarm, the recording was made anew but sounded exactly the same as the first. Analysts tried creating a timeline. First signal, 04I-9, October 12th. Second, 04I-9, October 18th. The difference, exactly 6 days. No intermediate calls, no repeats, no messages, only one fragment at the same time of day. A communications specialist called it a looped signal. This happens when old stations, unsynchronized in time, automatically transmit at set intervals, in test mode, or due to logic failure. But no test loops had been active on this frequency for over 10 years. The question remained: did the recording repeat, or was it repeated? And, most importantly, who knew that exactly at 4:17 a.m. it was time to broadcast again? It was kept in the right drawer of the dresser, beneath a stack of maps and inactive routes. A small black A6 notebook, cover of faux leather, embossed with the Office Max logo. The pages were yellowed, slightly wavy from moisture. It didn't seem regularly flipped through, more like selectively opened. The handwriting was angular, restrained. Almost all notes were on the right pages, as if Sam always left the left ones blank, either to allow corrections or to keep entries separate. The early pages were standard entries: weather conditions, precipitation levels, trail state, period, 2001 to 2002. All technical observation style, no emotion. Then, closer to the end of 2002, notes appeared that never made it to reports. Somewhere between D6 and the old camp. Again that rhythm. 3 quick, 1 long. Not a bore. Lantern flickered twice at Ridgetop, even though the battery is new. Check substation. It seems long dead. Then, a pause. Several silent months. The next cluster of entries, August and September, 2003. Closer to the disappearance date. Grayside 3 still feels quieter than it should. If someone's following me, why do they know where to turn? No tracks, but there are steps, always on the way back. A notable entry dated September 28th. Every time I go through the D13 turn, it feels like I've been here before. Same blade of grass, same broken tree, like someone setting the scene. None of these notes were sent to the department. None of his colleagues knew about them. The last pages, October, close to the departure moment. If the light wasn't a reflection, then where was it from? Too many coincidences. I'm not paranoid. Someone's doing this on purpose. The final note, undated, written at an angle, as if hurried. Hand less clear, line shaky. If I don't come out, don't search Ridgetop. Search where the map doesn't show a detour. There was no mention in the notebook of 4:17, no loops, no audio. But each line felt like a hidden attempt to leave a route no one read. He wasn't writing facts. He was leaving proof that none of this was accidental, not knowing who or when would read it. On the night of October 18th to 19th, exactly 7 days after the disappearance, a surveillance camera on the opposite ridge slope recorded a light pulse near Ridgetop Tower. The camera was one of the few working steadily, an old Panasonic with an analog sensor powered by a standalone battery. It mostly captured animals, coyotes, deer, occasionally tourists who crossed permitted boundaries. This time, no people appeared. Only forest, an empty tower, and a flash of light just under a second. Clearly, in the left window sash, a flare typical of a focused flashlight. Then, nothing. The team receiving the footage immediately cross-checked. No one patrolled Ridgetop that night. Neither searchers, volunteers, nor tech staff. All groups had been moved closer to Grayside 3, focus shifted to neighboring areas. GPS transmitter queries, 0. No camera motion, 0. Not a single registered person neared the perimeter. And yet, the light was there. The very light the tourist noted in the first journal entry, the one Sam planned to check. The one he noted was not a reflection. The file was examined frame by frame. On the 6th frame, in the shadow inside the window, a silhouette seemed to appear. A shoulder, a bent arm, or just distortion from the board shapes? The image instructor gave no conclusion. The file was archived as RS Window 19 OCT Frame 06 JPG. Sam wasn't found. The investigation stopped at not located, search suspended. Now the question remains open. Sam Eldridge, a man who was never rushed, never erred, never confused routes. He'd ventured into the woods hundreds of times and returned every time. That night, he took nothing extra, but everything he needed. It was like he wasn't going to seek, but to verify, something that wasn't on official routes. The radio, bearing a foreign ID. The tracks, not his depth. The recordings, repeating but not matching. And Ridgetop, locked with bolts no one bought. And that night, a week later, the light flashed again in the window. The question to you, do you believe it was an accident? Or did he know where he was going and that someone would follow? And most importantly, why does everything start again at 4:17?